start with the S tier. We got the 101 Caleb Williams going into one of the best situations ever for a #1 pick. Elite receiving options. They got DJ Moore, who's still waiting for that elite quarterback. Keenan Allen just had his best year ever. Run with Dunze, top 10 pick. And finally, Cole Kmet, an above average tight end who could be better. And a pretty good up and coming defense. Solid running back room with DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, Khalil Herbert, and pretty solid O-line. Probably their weakest part of the team, but it's not as bad as what he had at USC. So S tier, Caleb Williams. Next, another elite prospect, elite player, going to an elite situation. We got Marvin Harrison Jr. going at the 104 to the Arizona Cardinals with an elite quarterback. Wide open receiving room. Pretty good situation here. He should be expecting 12 plus targets each game. Probably like at least 140 for the season. Definitely going to be one of the top producers in this rookie class. And it's going to be an early second round pick in best ball redraft. And should be the 102 in any Superflex Dynasty draft in the coming weeks. And finally, to round off the S tier, kind of struggled to put him here, but I got Jaden Daniels of the new Washington Commanders going 102 in the draft. Not as good of a situation as Caleb Williams, but pretty solid. Let's say Caleb Williams was like solid A. Jaden Daniels will be going to like a C plus B minus kind of situation. But his elite explosiveness in the running game is the reason why he's in this tier. I mean, he got what's his name? Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, old Zach Ertz. They did draft Ben Sinnott, Luke McCaffrey. So it's not completely bad. It's just not amazing. But like I said, amazing rushing explosiveness puts him in this tier, especially in fantasy. That ends the S tier. Moving on. Next, we got the A tier. One of my favorite prospects in this class. We got Drake May going 103 to the New England Patriots. Horrible situation in terms of skill players on that team. Supporting cast is bad. If for some reason, let's assume Drake May went to the Redskins or Commanders, he'd still be in this tier because he doesn't have that explosive rushing ability. Although he is a pretty good runner and he does occasionally, get the design runs, but normally when he runs, it's to extend the play, whereas when Jaden Daniels runs, it's to score touchdowns. So that's the explosiveness that puts him in that tier. But Drake May, like I said, not a good supporting cast, but still has a lot of potential. And going 103 should solidify at least 4 years of starting. They did add Jalen Pope in the second round. Then Pop Douglas, Hunter Henry, Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson in the offense. And I guess they did draft an O-line, so it should be a little better this year, but still not a great situation, especially in the rookie year. Hopefully they add more weapons for him, but for now he is in that A tier. And next we got Malik Neighbors going to the Giants. He should be in that S tier, but unfortunately with the questionable quarterback room, he is here. If it was more of a solid QB room, it's definitely in that first tier, but there's a chance that Daniel Jones is not back next year, and they're probably going to draft a rookie quarterback, which will still limit his production. Essentially the new DJ Moore here, until Daniel Jones proves he could be the franchise quarterback. But until then, expect to see him get a lot of touches. Just his ceiling is going to be limited with the quarterback play, and also the skill position situation. He doesn't have that much talent with him. They got Devin Singletary and that short wide receiver forgetting his name. They got Jalen Hyatt and Darren Waller possibly retiring, so definitely void of talent on that offensive side and a questionable quarterback room. And finally, to end this tier, we got Rome Odunze going to the Chicago Bears at 109. I kind of struggled to put him in this tier, but the reason he is in this tier is because he is tied to Caleb Williams. And although, he won't be productive this first year because he is going to that crowded receiving room, a lot of talent's mouth to feed. Keenan Allen should be gone next year. He should be able to usurp Komet as the second in the pecking order, possibly beat DJ Moore if he is, worthy of that top 10 pick that we think he is. But until then, he's still in this A tier. And that ends the A tier. Moving on, we got the B tier, starting with one of my favorite prospects in this class again. We got JJ McCarthy landing 110 to the Minnesota Vikings. Amazing situation here. Unfortunately, the reason why he's not in that upper tier is because he's a very raw prospect. Don't get me wrong, elite weapon, Jordan Addison, JJ, best wide receiver in the NFL. TJ Hawkinson, who is a top tight end. Unfortunately, he's hurt, but when he does come back, then he got Aaron Jones for this season. Expect them to draft a running back tomorrow, but we'll see. But yeah, JJ McCarthy, great spot, just very raw. We'll see how he does. Expect him to sit first half of the season, and then hopefully they develop him. It's a pretty good offensive coaching staff, so definitely gonna reach that ceiling hopefully and have him jump in another tier. But until we see that potential being shown, he's still in this tier for me. And moving on, another good player, we got Brock Bowers, who landed in a not ideal situation here with a crowded tight end room, crowded receiving room, although pretty old. But the most glaring negative is the quarterback room is very, very questionable. Don't get me wrong, Minshew is solid, but in order to be an elite tight end fantasy producer, you need a tight end. You need an elite quarterback. And until they get that, Bowers is gonna be limited. Although he should be able to beat Jacoby Myers as top dog eventually once Devontae Adams leave. So he has a bright future, assuming he gets a quarterback. But until then, he's still in this tier for me. And finally, last player in this B tier, we got Bo Nix, who I'm pretty sure is just gonna stay on this tier. If anything, this is his peak. Got first round draft capital. Pretty solid guy, but I don't see a whole lot of ceiling in him. Pretty limited arm strength, limited potential. Doesn't excite me. Doesn't have those elite traits that you'd want. And I don't think he'll elevate any of the position players that he has. He'll just be in like a game manager plus something like a high-end QB2, but not bad to have. The reason why he's here is because he is the unquestioned QB1 coming into the season, and he will get his chance to prove that he can be more than that. But starting quarterback is worth a lot, and they usually maintain their value in Dynasty. So Bo Nix closing out the B tier. And moving on, next tier, in the C tier, we got Brian Thomas Jr., who I kind of almost put in that next tier, but if he got like top 15 draft capital, he probably went there. But unfortunately, he went the mid 20s, 23 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Although it's not a great receiving core in terms of elite potential, he is the elite potential in that room, and he has. Although, Trevor hasn't really had that breakout season yet, he has had pretty good games, but has been inconsistent. And he does have to compete with Christian Kirk. Mostly, Gabe Davis is trash. And he should beat out Zay Jones for that role. Zay Jones was garbage. He's especially a much better version of Zay Jones. should be able to catch those long touchdowns from Trevor Lawrence. But like I said, pretty late first round draft capital. I couldn't put him in the upper tier without putting, these next wide receivers up there because they also got late first draft capital. And next one, I got Xavier Worthy going 28 to this back-to-back Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chief. This was a weird pick for me because they already have Hollywood Brown, which is essentially similar players, but thing is, Hollywood is on a 1-year contract, and if he does smash this coming year, KC would not be able to afford him, so kind of makes sense in that way. But Worthy with that elite speed and that elite quarterback room, and being third, I guess, on the pecking order, maybe fourth, if Rashee Rice ever figures it out, he is gonna have those big games, and it's gonna be perfect for best ball. But for Dynasty, until Hollywood Brown leaves the team, he's kind of limited in the first year, but he's not gonna make the jump for me yet until I see how he's being utilized by the champion. But moving on in this tier, we got Keon Coleman to the Bills going 33rd overall, first pick in the second round. Pretty amazing spot here. Pretty barren wide receiver room. Essentially, his only real threat is Dalton Kincaid, and with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis essentially vacating like 200 targets, expect Coleman to at least get 90 and should be flex worthy, assuming he earns the starting job right away, which he should, because Curtis Samuel injury prone, Khalil Shakir too small, and that's pretty much it. Unless they do have a million picks in this draft, so they're probably gonna add another receiver. And finally, to end this tier, we got Vlad McConkey, another early second round pick going to the Chargers. Pretty good landing spot. Wide receiver room is easy to beat. We got QJ, who was a late first last year, but kind of had a terrible rookie season. Josh Palmer, although has shown flashes, no more than at best a high-end wide receiver to end. That's just his ceiling. I don't even know if he'll get there, but Vlad McConkey should have the red carpet to be the number one receiver in this room, unless, for some reason QJ just breaks out. But I think he'll take longer than Vlad. Should be better than him once training camp starts. Don't get me wrong, QJ still has more potential than Vlad, but Vlad is just a much better route runner at this point, better receiver, just ahead of QJ in every metric except size. But anyways, that ends the C tier. Moving on to the D tier. So first, let's talk about Michael Penix. In this D tier, he is the initial one, quarterback going 108 to the Falcons. Let's assume Kirk Cousins didn't exist, and Michael Penix goes 108. Then I'll be throwing up Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Bijan Robinson. Just amazing cast. He would be in that Drake May tier, possibly in the S tier, because top 8 draft capital, amazing supporting cast. Like, I would take him right after Jaden Daniels, honestly, but unfortunately we live in a world where Kirk Cousins does exist. He did get that massive contract, and Michael Penix will be sitting for at least, at best, or at worst, 2 years. So he's gonna be a backup for 2 years. And even at this stage, it's kind of a reach because you can't even use him for 2 years. But that draft capital is there, man. 108, top 10. So he still belongs in this tier. Fortunately, we won't see him unless for some reason Kirk Cousins isn't healthy, but I'm pretty sure he will be. They paid him too much. But anyways, Michael Penix, the initial player in this D tier. Next, we got Ricky Pearsall going 31 to the Niners. He's a pretty good prospect. Unfortunately, he's walking into a pretty crowded wide receiver room. A lot of question marks to whether he'll be successful in the first year or even like startable. But if for some reason one of Devo or Ayuk is traded, which most likely not, because we're in day 3 now. But look out for, year 2. Pretty old Devo, injury prone. Kittle, another year older. Ayuk, we'll see if he gets traded, but he could possibly be the wide receiver 1 in year 2, but that's a lot of if for Ricky Pearsall. But talent is there, and everyone's been hyping him up. So the next we got Xavier Legette going last pick in the first round, 132. Carolina trading up for him, and it's similar to Ricky Pearsall, but a worse quarterback. But it's gonna depend on progression of Bryce Young here. Although his only real competition is Deontay Johnson for targets, he should earn that, number 2 pecking order at the very least, like 5 games into the season. Like we'll see, Thielen win the first few games and eventually get phased out because they want to, develop these wide receivers they keep taking early, like Mingo. But anyways, this all depends on Bryce Young, but they are making all the moves to help Bryce Young, so this should be a good pick in year 2. And finally, next person in this tier, we got Jonathan Brooks, first running back taken in the draft to the Carolina Panthers, so they are helping Bryce Young, like I said. Fortunately, he's coming off injury, which everyone said he should be healthy by training camp, which is cool. But they still have Chuba Hubbard. Last year in his contract should be the bell cow. And they're pretty sure they're going to ease up Jonathan Brooks here. And hopefully by, mid-season or towards the end, he is the RB1. But like I said, it's a lot of if. And you don't want to aggravate anything. But he should be a good help to Bryce Young's, projection or development. And next, we get the second running back taken in the draft, Trey Benson, going to the Arizona Cardinals, going to a great offense. Unfortunately, this year, there's another better running back on that team in James Conner. So we won't get to see the full Trey Benson experience unless he gets hurt, which probably 1 or 2 games, but not all season. And with how that defense has played over the last half of the season last year, with Kyler Murray getting Marvin Harrison, this team could be in potential playoff battle, like all the way through the end of the season. So they're probably going to use Connor a little bit more, but next year Benson should be the unquestioned RB1 when Connor leaves for free agency. And next in this tier, we got Jalen Pope, Mace, number 1 receiver. I didn't watch a lot of Jalen Pope except live games. He is a pretty good receiver, but he just didn't excite me at all. But he is going into a wide receiver room that's very wide open. Everyone literally sucks. They got Hunter Henry and Pop Douglas, which are okay, but they're not game changing. And then they got what's his name, Kendrick Bourne coming off ACL. So Jalen Pope should be walking into like 10 targets a game, 8 plus for sure. I mean, it also depends on Drake May if he does start beginning of the year to develop that chemistry. But that's a lot of if, and although it's a new regime, New England's never good at drafting wide receivers. And plus I had like 3 receivers available that I had ranked over Jalen Pope, but I guess we'll trust, the professionals here, going pretty early to New England. And finally, last person in this tier is one of my favorite players. Like I said, super high ceiling, super low floor. Now I guess I know what the NFL chose. He has a super low floor. He went to the Indianapolis Colts, late second, A.D. Mitchell. Pretty decent spot, honestly. Although it's pretty crowded with Josh Downs and Michael Pittman. But he has the potential to be a much better receiver than either of those. But the thing is, will we ever see him reach that potential? Hopefully. And also, we still need to see Anthony Richardson progress his throwing skills. We only saw him for 4 games. We saw that he could do it, but can he do it consistently and on an explosive basis? We'll see also, but AD Mitchell should help with that situation. And then that ends the tier.